What's up? Welcome back to Lit News. It's the latest in tech news served hot just for you. Today's first topic was a request sent in by Al Rashid. Thanks, buddy. Okay, so General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR as you've likely heard of it. What is it? What does it mean to me? In short, it's a step towards better data security and privacy protection laws. Specifically, GDPR is a set of European Union regulations that define how companies use personal data. Your personal data. So let's define personal data. And according to the European Commission, personal data is any information relating to an individual, whether it relates to his or her private, professional, or public life. It can be anything from a name, a home address, a photo, an email address, bank details, your posts on social networking websites, medical information, or simply a computer's IP address. Okay, so hold up. You said this was a European Union regulation and I don't live there, so why do I care? Well, the regulations are written to have two jurisdictional hooks that basically include everyone. The first hook is that GDPR applies to any establishment that's inside the European Union, whether or not you do business with people there. If you have a field office there, then you're under their jurisdiction and those laws apply. The second hook is that GDPR applies to any organization or company or business on the globe that offers goods or services or that monitors the behavior of data subjects that are in the EU. Now, it's interesting that the regulations refer to data subjects rather than people. It makes me wonder if the law is written that way so that way it could potentially include pets or sentient non-human life forms, robots, etc. Interesting. But the key there is it doesn't mean EU citizens, it just means people, data subjects that are in the European Union, resident or alien or visitor or whatever. So in short, if you think about it, this basically covers everybody on the globe. So these regulations passed in May of 2016 and they all went live in May of 2018. And you might have seen some comments on Twitter where somebody is making specific comments where they say things like, oh, GDPR is killing the internet. Well, no, it's not. The effect it's having is that, for the example of this tweet, it's a St. Louis news outlet that doesn't have any establishment in the EU or care about serving EU data subjects, right? This is news about St. Louis, Missouri in the US. They don't need to worry about that. So all that means is, I guess somebody here was in Berlin and trying to access the website to read an article there, and they couldn't. By simply disallowing the connectivity, they are not going to pick up any data from those people. They can maintain compliance. Now, I would argue that that's just going to be a knee-jerk reaction from the few and far between, and the vast majority of people will actually work to adhere to these regulations because they're good for everybody, frankly. So why was this even done? The EU's GDPR website says it was designed to harmonize data privacy laws across Europe, as well as to give greater protection and rights to individuals. So I'm a business, help me understand what it means to comply. Very simply, the goal is to get businesses to only collect the data that they absolutely need to do business with you, and then when they have that data, to protect it. So there's three main things that you have to do in order to comply with GDPR's goals for you as a business. First, you have to have a legit reason to collect their data. Second, you have to give users control over their data. And then third, you have to reasonably protect it. So under the first topic of having a legit reason to collect the user's data, there's 6 main things that you can do to tell them, hey, this is why we're collecting your data. Option 1 is getting explicit consent from the user to collect that data. That's just simply, hey, you're here, I want to collect this data, are you cool with that? And they specifically say, yes, I see that you're trying to collect this data, go for it. Option 2 is that you need the data to conduct business, like a delivery address for pizza. Option 3 is that you need data to comply with another law. Option 4 is that you need that data to protect someone's life. Option 5 is that you're a public authority and that you need that data to conduct your responsibilities. And the 6th reason is that you have a legitimate interest in that data, but this requires additional documentation because it's so vague. So that second big thing is that you have to give users control over their data. So what does this mean? Once you collect that data, the GDPR outlines 8 specific things that the users have rights to. You have to tell the users why you're collecting the data, what you plan on doing with it, and how long you're going to keep it. The second right they have is the ability to request a copy of all the data that that company has about them. The third is that a user can correct data that they feel is inaccurate. The fourth is that a user can request that you delete all of their data. The fifth is that a user can request that you stop processing all the data that you have about them. The sixth is that if a user of your service wants to transfer to another service, they have the right to ask for and transfer all that data in a machine-readable format to the new service. The seventh is that a user can deny specific rights to their data for a certain purpose, like maybe marketing. And the eighth is actually pretty interesting. If you're using personal data for automated decision making or profiling, think insurance companies who is evaluating a potential client, you're required to be able to explain to that user how your model works and to have an appeal system for that user should they disagree. And in most cases, the companies have 30 days to respond to the requests from these users. Now, it's interesting to imagine the implications that this could have on companies who haven't and probably aren't ready for this type of stuff. If you can imagine tens of thousands of requests coming in for some of these rights all at the same time, I don't know that there's that many companies that could be able to fulfill those requests, much less on a broad scale. And the third big thing is that you're required to protect their data. So this guideline is pretty vague, and it makes statements like, you have to design security as part of your offering. It can't just be an afterthought. You have to regularly test your security, and if you do have breaches, you have 3 days to let the authorities know. So some best practices as a company is to, one, be aware of what kind of data you do collect and control, and realize that the answers might not all be in the IT department. You might need to go to sales or legal or HR or marketing, etc., to collect and gather all that data and protect it and be able to respond should these requests come in. I'd also highly suggest that you outline and document your steps as a company to become GDPR compliant. That'll be huge for the company should regulators come knocking on the door. And realize too that the ICO regulators aren't going to be able to scale and come after every single company that offends. They're going to go after major offenders first. This is kind of a, you're in the forest, you see a bear, you don't really have to run faster than the bear, you just have to run faster than your friend. If you're a big offender of what the ICO is trying to achieve with these regulations, and there's tens of thousands of complaints coming in every single month about what you're doing, yeah, you can expect them to show up on your door. Now, a quick side note on all this, the GDPR regulations will bring sweeping changes globally to how businesses operate, but these rights that I reviewed are not applicable to non-EU data subjects. If you're outside the EU, you don't have the rights to make those requests. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if, because they have to make those requests capable to the EU data subjects, that it wouldn't also benefit or be able to be made by non-EU data subjects. One of the nice spillover effects is that these data breach notifications are much stricter than the current US laws about it. And another huge upside to all of this is advancing the much needed and oft ignored data security field within technology. You'll see a lot of job creations of chief data office inside large companies to help manage this GDPR compliance and all the processes and requests that'll flow through that. You'll see a better focus on security practices becoming a bedrock of what a solution is, rather than it being an afterthought. Okay, so talk to me about fines for a second. What happens if I'm not compliant? Well, this is kind of big. There's just a blanket statement of either 4% of your worldwide revenue or 20 million euro, whichever one is greater. So as an example, look at this. Amazon reported 177 billion in 2017 revenue, but only 3 billion in profit. Now, at 4% based on their worldwide revenue, that would be over 7 billion in fines, which would be more than 2 years worth of profit. Ouch! Now, 4 out of 5 data scientists agree compliance of 100% is practically impossible. It simply comes down to doing as best you can and being as honest as possible about what you're using the data for and having a genuine interest in protecting users' data. So that's a wrap on GDPR. I hope that catches you up. If you have other questions, comment below. So for topic 2, the last topic of today, I saw an article where Steph Curry was investing in an esports company, and I was like, what? So I had to go to my esports professional correspondent, Mr. Russ Cantwell. Mr. Russ Cantwell, are you out there?
What's up, Lit News? Aaron sent me over this article showing me an investment from Stephen Curry and a few other investors in the California region, it appeared, into TSM, Team Solo Mid. So if you're not familiar with Team Solo Mid, they are an esports organization competing in professional video games. And this is something that I'm pretty big into. I follow it quite a bit. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see I'm blowing stuff up all the time. So Aaron wanted my take on it. My primary quick take on this is honestly that it's not something new. It's just something that I think is being brought to the forefront that a lot of people weren't aware of. In particular, Stephen Curry isn't even really the first one to do this, but it's probably important to know that it is huge. It's a big investment. So I'll give you some names of some other people who are doing it. Shaq invested in NRG back in 2014. Mark Cuban has been investing in esports ventures for several years now. Kobe Bryant's invested. The Cavs have a spot in the Overwatch League, which I'll hit on in a second. Robert Kraft has a spot in the Overwatch League. Jerry Jones owns Complexity Gaming, which actually has their headquarters out of the Star up in Frisco. Rick Fox bought a team and turned them into Echo Fox as the esports organization, competing in League of Legends and Counter-Strike, a few other games across the spectrum. But what's important here, and the biggest take, is this is esports invading the traditional spectrum. The traditional spectrum being that we've always had these independently ran organizations that just sort of run all around the world competing in different tournaments, and there hasn't been a lot of structure to it. There's no localization. It's hard to understand what team do I root for and why. It's not the same as your traditional sports where if, I live in Dallas and we have the Dallas Cowboys, so I go for the Dallas Cowboys. Well, Blizzard Entertainment with the game Overwatch and the Overwatch League last year decided to start the franchising. So localization in the markets. Dallas is actually a team that's owned by the organization called Envious, called the Dallas Fuel, for the Overwatch League, which was a $20 million spot that had to be paid to get into the Overwatch League to represent the Dallas market in that esports organization. So this investment here is actually something very similar going on in the League of Legends community, where Team Solo Mid is huge into and is actually one of the largest esports in the world, where they're paying 10, 15, 20 million dollars for these spots to be franchised in and to represent certain cities. And so Stephen Curry is a part of a fundraiser by that organization to fund the purchase of a league spot for the inaugural season of the regionalized league for League of Legends. This is new. This is big. Esports has been around for about 20, 30 years now, and it's only growing more and more, and this is showing how it's going to kind of explode and grow into the more traditional markets that we see the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL running as well. So that's my take, and I don't know, game on.
All right, y'all, that's what's up for today. As always, if you've got an update that's on fire, ping me on Twitter at Aaron Bewley so I can fold it into the next episode. Stay lit, fam. Catch you tomorrow.